Chapter 1: The Hero's Journey Past the Dragon, Through the Shadow, and into the Dark Sea of Awareness. Stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion. Rumi. The Quantum Dance. The world appears substantial. We bump into things and each other. We feel the rain and would swear on our mother's grave we're encountering a collection of material drops. To say otherwise invites cynical laughter and derision. Yet quantum physics, the study of the universe at its most minute level, unveils a startlingly different picture from what today's hyper-materialist humans so glibly dub reality. This may be old hat to some, but in the quantum realm, the things we take for granted aren't really things at all. In other words, they're not solid. There is, to adapt a phrase I adore and often cite, attributed to Gertrude Stein, simply no there. Even those of us who understand some of the scientific theories behind this concept often only pay lip service to it, believing one thing, reality isn't solid, while acting with cognitive dissonance based on a diametrically opposed belief. Reality is hard and immutable. Nevertheless, it can be shown, intuited, and eventually even seen with the inner senses that this world is nothing more or less than an intricate dance of energy, a sea of swirling possibilities where everything is constantly in flux. Seers and mystics, in fact, sometimes refer to this foundational realm out of which the movie of our lives momentarily projects as the dark sea of awareness, a term I first encountered in the shamanic work of Carlos Castaneda, and which has more recently informed John Kreiter's groundbreaking contemporary revelation of the ancient mysteries of alchemy. Atoms, the building blocks of so-called matter, however much they might seem to be physically circumscribed, aren't actually like tiny billiard balls. That's kindergarten science. From a shamanic or alchemical perspective, atoms are more like sentient waves, their intelligently responsive existence a blur of potential until they magically appear to materialize. Mimetic desire and belief manipulation. There is, of course, a method to the multiverse's creative madness, an order and energetic methodology behind what appears to be pure chaos. From a human perspective, as Kreiter observes in the magnum opus, beliefs are the underlying structures that shape our lives. They create and give direction to thoughts and ideas, and these thoughts trigger or induce emotions that then naturally propel raw and very powerful energy through and around the body and into the environment at large. While this may sound all well and good, there's a sobering pitfall to the way we go about imagining our world. Through a process known as mimetic desire, which leads people to assign value based not on direct experience, but through imitation of what others appear to desire, beliefs can be conditioned and even installed in the human psyche. As French philosopher René Girard explained in his influential mimetic theory, man is the creature who does not know what to desire, and he turns to others in order to make up his mind. We desire what others desire because we imitate their desires. The upshot is that the world brought into being by people through their installed belief systems can be manipulated by anyone or anything powerful and knowledgeable enough to pull the right emotional strings to produce the desired beliefs. In my previous book, The World, Cult, and You, I spent a lot of time on the subject of what some have called the tyranny of belief. This phrase can refer to the control and manipulation of the human herd through society-wide implementation of both laughably obvious and cleverly camouflaged forms of indoctrination. To use George Orwell's famous term, we're talking about groupthink, which Wikipedia describes as a psychological phenomenon that occurs within a group of people in which the desire for harmony or conformity in the group results in irrational or dysfunctional decision making. The desire for cohesiveness in a group may produce a tendency among its members to agree at all costs. This causes the group to minimize conflict and reach a consensus decision without critical evaluation. The key takeaway is that society's members are psychically pressured into defining true and right based not on personal experience or direct gnosis, inner knowing, but on what the creators of social discourse put forward as true and right. In other words, what to believe in, even in the absence of genuine logic or compelling evidence. This situation leads, almost inevitably it would seem, to the creation of a certain kind of top-down pyramidal structure that controls society, culture, and, given enough free rein, eventually the world itself. I'll return to the massively important and almost completely ignored, due to social engineering, topic of mental reality installations a bit later. But for now, let's observe the observer effect. The oft-discussed observer effect, based on the so-called particle-wave duality, made famous by numerous researchers conducting double-slit experiments, isn't a negligible phenomenon. To the contrary, the observer effect applies to far more than just photons appearing as particles or waves, depending on whether an observer happens to be around to coalesce them with the power of attention. Doing this with light is just a cheap party trick, like pulling a rabbit, a particle, out of the infinite probability waves of the quantum soup, the dark sea of awareness. But things can get way more intriguing. As evidenced by such minutely scrutinized paranormal phenomena as tulpas and egregores, the really jaw-dropping magic happens when, knowingly or otherwise, we use our focus to collapse waves into actual matter. A notion deriving from Tibetan Buddhism, a tulpa is said to be a thought form materialization, often taking human shape and serving as a helper or servitor, generated by way of consistently applied intention and attention. Similarly, an egregore, we read in Wikipedia, is a non-physical entity that arises from the collective thoughts of a distinct group of people. The concept is referred to a psychic manifestation or a thought form, which occurs when any group shares a common motivation, being made up of and influencing the thoughts of the group. Leaving aside the many connections between such thought forms and reality installations that form and inform groupthink and related behaviors, let's cut to the chase about the larger implications of such phenomena. Not to put too fine a point on it, but the documented existence of tulpas and egregores, both of which have often been witnessed by multiple individuals simultaneously, strongly suggests, in John Rappaport's emphatic words, that the universe is a product of mind. Indeed, one could argue that the observer effect is the primary energetic dynamic of reality itself. This effect showcases the eminently malleable nature of the Lego pieces of our world, atoms, as material objects that appear to become so only through an act of creative focus. This may strain credulity, but at the fundamental level of energy, it's just how things are. The human gaze is so potent, in fact, it can actually be felt with our sixth sense, what I think of as the psychic one, as biochemist Rupert Sheldrake redundantly demonstrates in The Sense of Being Stared At. Mind over matter. The observer effect puts our everyday perceptions and assumptions in a blender. It dictates if we're to be honest with ourselves, sober in our thinking, and not reactionary in our emotions, that the world we see is not the ultimate reality, but merely a projection of it. From this perspective, the manifest world is revealed as what Hindu mystics refer to as Maya, illusion, the imaginal outpourings of minds, like children naturally playing in magical constructs that seem eminently real, simply doing what minds do. In the words of physicist Arthur Stanley Eddington, the mind stuff of the world is, of course, something more general than our individual conscious minds. It is difficult for the matter-of-fact physicist to accept the view that the substratum of everything is of mental character. But no one can deny that mind is the first and most direct thing in our experience, and all else is remote inference. Contrary to the dogma downloaded from our many cult-like institutions of higher, actually lower, learning, we are not in any way separate from this quantum dance of the imagination. We're inextricably bound up in it. In a mind-melting paradox, we somehow manage to give rise to the quantum dance, even as it dances us. We're like the mythical Ouroboros, the serpent consuming its own tail, a stylized image of which I've placed at the end of each chapter herein, to remind us of our absurdly profound and infinite nature. As we learn to appreciate the waltz of shadows on the walls of Plato's cave, we begin to grasp that the solid objects we think of as ourselves are merely illusions moving through a greater illusion. Only then can we begin to get real, as it slowly dawns on us that objectivity is a subjective fantasy implanted in us by an external will seeking to curtail our creativity by limiting our minds to our own detriment. As I mentioned in the introduction, it's possible to become so real, so energetically sovereign, so full of power and magic that we can grow wings, figuratively anyway, and fly this chicken coop. In other words, we can leave this delusional world and the world cult that sustains it, flapping in the breeze, while exiting as increasingly self-realized beings. Few will even attempt this feat of alchemical transmutation, I realize. But at the very least, we can get real in our understanding, or better, understanding, as we begin to collect the scattered fragments of ourselves we've left behind in our unconsciousness. As I'll discuss in due course, shamanic recapitulation, inner alchemy, and my own powerful form of inner genetic work, the regenetics method, are extremely useful tools in this internal process of awakening, and perhaps eventually becoming our whole, authentic selves. A critical piece of this holistic self-becoming involves the deeply felt realization that our thoughts, beliefs, and intentions aren't merely mental or just imaginary events. On the contrary, they're potent forces interacting synergistically with the quantum field, the biofield of the universal mind, if you will. In a culture crafted by eager yes men and women to an overbearing materialism, this may be a hard pill to swallow. But that doesn't change this clear, to many anyway, dynamic. The simply powerful act of observation influences the universe at its most basic level. How far does this go? Might it go all the way? Could it be not just a micro, but a macro effect as well? I think so. What we focus on, what we believe, has a direct effect on the unfolding of actual events. Small ones, yes, but large ones as well. Indeed, our sustained focus is the primary driver in bringing what are initially purely imagined scenarios, some on an expanded scale, to life. At the micro end of the spectrum, this even applies to our genes. These can be switched on and off consciously through intentional application of our awareness, as Dr. Bruce Lipton has shown in his inspiring research in the emerging science of epigenetics. Epigenetics reveals that your body isn't a genetically predetermined flesh robot, but a set of gene switches that can be turned on or off by you mindfully. Ergo, our genes aren't our destiny. We have far more control over their expression than most ever imagined. This isn't mere philosophical musing we're engaging in here. Epigenetic effects are strongly backed by experiments, repeated ones in many cases, which show its great power to improve health and well-being through the exercise of conscious intention and attention. Whether we like it or not, we're walking placebo and nocebo generators, able to create health miracles or disasters, usually without even realizing we're the ones doing so, practically in the blink of an eye. Change is an inside job. Meanwhile, looking around us at the social landscape, it could hardly be more apparent that history is a sad testament to the limitations of external change or changing things from the outside. A dime a dozen and almost invariably overrated in hindsight. Countless revolutions, insurgencies, wars, conflicts, struggles, and social movements have stubbornly and blindly sought to create a better world. Yet true, lasting transformation remains elusive at the groupthink level. We grapple with the same issues generation after generation in this hamster wheel called reality. Why is external change so damn challenging? Because, I contend, to echo Henry David Thoreau's celebrated quote about the branches and roots of evil, pursuing external change only addresses symptoms, not the deeper cause. The world we see out there is a reflection of our cleverly molded shared consciousness, our collective belief installed through manipulation of our mimetic desire, not a given thing that can't be changed. This means, as in the adage, that we can heal the world only if we heal ourselves. By succumbing to external conditioning and looking outside ourselves for answers, thus denying the power of our imagination and ignoring the only viable path forward into the future, that of internal transformation, we're bound to just keep pouring gasoline on a world already on fire. As Carl Jung wisely observed in his meditations on the shadow, whatever is rejected from the self appears in the world as an event. The world can most definitely be changed, but not by using the materialist ways we've been taught, designed to keep us beating our heads against the walls and bars of the real world. To change this designedly dysfunctional construct, which our own co-opted creative attention is actually responsible for materializing and maintaining, we must first change ourselves. Neville Goddard, a true pioneer of creative consciousness, said it best. Stop trying to change the world, since it is only the mirror. Man's attempt to change the world by force is as fruitless as breaking a mirror in the hope of changing his face. Leave the mirror and change your face. Leave the world alone and change your conceptions of yourself. The reflection then will be satisfactory. We must then shift our perceptions, beliefs, intentions, and emotions. We must harness the power of the observer effect to induce a quantum change in the observed world. We must return to our center and resurrect our innate ability to perform miracles with only the tool of our consciousness. This is true magic, not something out of Hogwarts. We're more than capable of waving our wands over the manifest world and making its madness disappear. But first, we have to realize that we're born wizards, each and every one of us. There are no muggles here. The Hero's Journey. Another movie that provides a powerful metaphor for this book, as mentioned, is The Matrix. I'm referencing in particular the first installment of this franchise, whose liberating message appeared to have been, as typically happens, doomed from the start to be hijacked by its follow-ups crawling with hidden agendas. Neo's iconic story in the first movie depicts a world where reality is a computer simulation, a prison for the mind. The characters must choose to take the blue pill and remain in blissful ignorance, or swallow the red one and face the truth, however unsettling. If you're unaware of this famous plot line that has inspired a million memes, you obviously took the blue pill. We too live in a sort of matrix, one of our own manipulated mental making. Here it's worth repeating that our emotions, thoughts, and beliefs are the raw power that can be focused to create our experience of reality. To begin breaking free, individually, before even so much as contemplating doing this collectively, we must stop taking the black pill of skepticism and down the red pill of introspection. Only then, by exercising our will, can we resist the temptation to deny our true potential using the blue pill and instead graduate to the white pill of transcendence. Less poetically, our task is to confront the limitations of our own belief systems and the resultant intellectual constructs, and dismantle the bars and wires of our self-imposed prison. To do this requires looking inside as responsible agents of change, not outside as victims of a world beyond our control. The hero's journey, a narrative archetype found in myths and stories across cultures, popularized by comparative mythologist Joseph Campbell, provides a roadmap for this inner transformation. The heroic quest typically highlights a seemingly average person, think Thomas Anderson before he becomes Neo, who embarks on a perilous undertaking, confronts challenges and temptations, and ultimately returns to his or her starting place, transformed and usually upgraded. This myth appears central to human experience. The tarot, for example, which reads as a distillation of ancient mythology, is in essence about the heroic quest to become one's true self. Even the parable of the prodigal son can be interpreted as a retelling of the hero's journey. As you might expect by now, this journey isn't merely external, it's primarily internal. The hero's journey, applied to our matrix analogy, suggests that the only way out of the so-called simulation is into oneself. The hero's ultimate inner battle is against the enemy within, the shadow self, our own agent Smith, the unrecognized and unintegrated aspects of the psyche that only battle and hinder us until we make peace with them. There's also the small matter of a dangerous dragon, a literal monster, guarding the entrance to our internal cave, which we must face and defeat to achieve liberation from the Matrix. But more on that later. By standing up to our fears, examining our darkness, and reassembling our fragmented selves, we undergo a profound metamorphosis, provided we're up to the challenge of seeing the world for what it is, a product of our own projections that have been manipulated for something else's benefit. As we embark on this challenging yet transformational inner journey, we tap into the quantum self, the infinite potential that resides within. We come to realize that we're not victims of circumstance, but conscious creators with the power to literally change the world, or at least our world, by altering our worldview. Our own reclaimed beliefs, which are more like deep knowings based on direct personal experience instead of mimetic desire, are some of the primary tools that we employ as increasingly conscious architects of our own experience. By cultivating awareness while following our bliss and learning to work with and eventually see the energy of the dark sea of awareness, and aligning our intentions with our most absurdly profound gnosis of how the universe actually works and where we fit into it, we become powerful change agents indeed. As David Hawkins demonstrated in Power versus Force, we influence the quantum field not through force, but through purposeful, conscious resonance with all that is, including all that we are. The hero's journey is, in the final analysis, the shamans, the alchemists, the wizards, and it's all about energy. Power up and hold on tight as you transform into more and more of the miraculous creature you've always been. In the immortal words of W.B. Yeats, the world is full of magic things, patiently waiting for your senses to grow sharper. As we become more energetically empowered, we transmute into living embodiments of the world we wish to see, radiating our signature creative passions into the fabric of existence and inviting a new and better expression of that fabric in the here and now. Thank you for walking beside me as I share various methods to engage and succeed in your own hero's journey. We'll examine everything from simplicity and dancing to the nature of the dragon, the shadow, and the infinite world of possibilities awaiting our exploration beyond.